This is your official spoiler warning for the D&D movie, Bullet Train, and oddly enough, the movie Double World? This isn't supposed to be a long video, but you guys know how I like to run off at the mouth. Now, before I say anything, this is not a review of sorts. It is critical. It's not a review. You know how I feel about people who critique things after seeing them only once. I'm not really critiquing this. I'm critiquing more a pattern that I am finding in movies more and more lately that's sort of been getting on my nerves. I actually really enjoy the D&D movie. As someone who has played D&D for almost 5-6 years at this point, I felt seen. I loved the movie. I thought it was very spunky. I thought it was a little bit ugly, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I very much enjoyed it. As a matter of fact, it was, I would actually say it was worth the $18. Oh, just saying that out loud was a little painful, but I still think it was worth it. Now, for those of you who know, and for those of you who don't, my name is TK. I'm an amateur writer, a voiceover artist, and your resident lunatic. And today, I have beef. This is a little different than my normal videos. It's even a little different from my R Flag Means Death review, which I still think wasn't necessarily a review, but that's neither here nor there. But I have beef. It started with Bullet Train. As a matter of fact, it started before Bullet Train. It started with like Tangled or How to Train Your Dragon. So let me start from the beginning. There are lots of things to love about the D&D movie. Regé-Jean Page and Michelle Rodriguez in particular stand out to me. Michelle Rodriguez isn't just buff wife in this movie, although she is absolutely buff wife. She is still very vulnerable and not in that fast and furious way that we're all used to. I don't want to say she's soft per se, because I think they make her vulnerable without making her soft. More often than not, in a lot of Hollywood movies, the tough girl character is usually not really seen as anything else until she is forced to apologize or capitulate to the main character in some way, and we'll get there. It's kind of a remnants of the Red Sonja trope, which is problematic for a number of reasons. Then you have Regé-Jean Page, who plays like the perfect paladin. Oh my god, is everything everybody wanted Drax to be. Because to be honest, this movie is the first franchise property in ages to have any kind of heart and soul to it whatsoever. Sophia Lillis and Justice Smith were adorable. Even the young girl who plays Chris Pine's daughter, cute, adorable, maybe not the best actress, but she's young, it's fine. Then there's Colin Firth, who had an amazing like Jim Carrey and Sonic moment. That role was perfect for him. Very good non-combative villain, very good NPC type, kind of a red herring of sorts. You kind of think he's gonna fight, but I honestly wouldn't expect Colin Firth to fight in a movie. Even though the trek to the Underdark did seem like filler, didn't seem super necessary, I didn't really care. I loved the Fat Dragon because you're not going to have a Dungeons and Dragons movie without a dragon in the goddamn dungeon. Speaking of unnecessary things though, I'm not saying that Chris Pine was bad in this movie. I'm not saying that by any means. He's great in like everything he does. Now granted, he does always kind of play the same sort of sassy, I got this kind of character, but it doesn't really matter. Listen, he was the best part in Don't Worry Darling, and nobody really liked Don't Worry Darling, but you know, that's not the point. What I'm trying to say is that although he was really good, I just don't see why he was there. I don't expect Colin Firth to fight. When you put Chris Pine in something like an action movie, I expect him to fight. I expect him to do anything but hit people with a lute. I know it's a heist movie. He's supposed to be the idea guy. He's supposed to be the Danny Ocean. I don't know, man. This movie could have been written without Chris Pine, because to me, it just seemed like he didn't do anything. And you know, when I left the movie, I told my husband and my friends this, and I was very much greeted with the, well, he was a bard. Here's the thing, bards aren't useless. And before you call me a butthurt bard main, I have never played a bard in my life. This goes back to a problem that I have had for a long time. The hapless main character with the hyper competent party. Now, the high fantasy genre genre isn't exactly known for being kind to its NPCs and side characters, the movie Double World comes to mind, where the young main character fucks up in every single conceivable way possible, yet every other character, including the older ones and the women, suffer and die almost needlessly. Now, I do believe a lot of high fantasy media is trying to change that, much to the ire of men who can't let go of the 80s. After Game of Thrones, we kind of all got it out of our systems. We need something different, something a bit more hopeful, honestly, less depressing. There's also been a shift in how writers approach the main characters of these stories. Rather than making them a power fantasy, they want to make them relatable and approachable, and more often than not, this works. However, there seems to be a small problem with these characters. Normally, they are very charming. They're usually the idea guy, sure, but like Brad Pitt in Bullet Train, they start seeming a little unnecessary and kind of make things worse. Now, this could just be me still being bitter that Astrid wasn't the main character of How to Train Your Dragon, but that's neither here nor there. But I am not the only person who has noticed clumsy, scaredy cat protagonist with the hyper competent everyone else is becoming a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Boring. I was actually really upset that Chris Pine didn't seem to do any fighting. He did come up with the ideas per se. The only idea that seemed to actually pan out was when the ship with all the gold started going over the arena, because it goes back to the nature of D&D, where you have to solve the puzzle, you have to continue to come up with strategies, and sometimes those strategies aren't quite right. I do feel like some coincidences were forced in their way, which wouldn't have happened in a D&D campaign, but once again, this is not a review. What I want to talk about is why we are continuing to cast these faces like Brad Pitt, like Chris Pine in these movies, and they don't do anything. There is no reason for them to be there other than to get butts in seats. To a certain extent, this is probably something that's necessary, unfortunately, because I do understand that aside from concert venues and restaurants, movies also took a huge hit during the 11th plague, so I understand why you would need to cast a big name in a new type of movie. I also think that this goes back to an over-reliance on franchises, and when they don't have franchises, biopics. It's almost like they think these movies cannot exist without someone everyone knows in it. To an extent, I really think that that is true. I don't know if it's a problem with the industry or if it's a problem with the audiences, probably both, but if it's not hooked up to a franchise for life support or a biopic, it really does seem like people just won't go see it. I mean, there are movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once that stood out, you know, among the titans. That's really the first time that's happened in so many years. I don't think I have seen a positive reaction, I'm gonna say non-adapted screenplays, and technically the D&D movie is an adapted screenplay, but that's besides the point. I don't think I have seen a positive reaction of non-adapted screenplays that didn't have to come from someone who had gone to the film festivals. I would think back to movies like Don't Worry Darling, people were just kind of like, the only reason people saw it was because Florence Pugh and Harry Styles were in it. People didn't see the movie for Chris Pine. You can fight me on that. I'm really hoping that with the success of a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once, we will stop being over-reliant on the familiar. I do often feel like every movie that comes out has to deal with some franchise from something, and this could be Disney's fault because you know I don't like Disney, but it's not just Disney. And I do know that D&D is a franchise of sorts, and someone's gonna kill me for this comparison. D&D is a lot like Final Fantasy, where you can have the same monsters and the same places, but the adventuring party will always be different. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of hoping that the last scene of the movie will be the first scene of the movie, but in someone else's perspective, and they'll have their own adventuring party and their own quest, etc. I think that would be great. There are people who are always like, oh, we want an original story. We want original characters. We're tired of everything being a franchise. We know that's not actually how you feel, because more often than not, the biggest, most successful things come from these franchises and these biopics and these true crime shows that are still going on even though the victims are still alive. I watched a little bit of The Dropout the other day, and it was just mind-blowing to me how we were trying to portray her as anything other than what she is, which is a criminal. That's besides the point. That's another story for another day. Hey, maybe I'll make another ranting video like this on The Dropout next. I won't. Listen, I'm not saying that I'm a great writer and that I could write something better or that I could cast something better. What I'm saying is that does there have to be a quippy white man in every movie? In every action? Does there have to be? Fast and Furious made it a whole, what, 9 movies without one? Because Brian couldn't crack a joke to save his life, and Dominic Toretto certainly wasn't gonna do it. And to an extent, I get it. The famous face is necessary because you do want to get butts in seats. But when they don't do anything in the plot or really don't service the plot over anything other than some pithy quips here and there, you start to feel a little bit, if there is a word for being led like a cat with a treat, that's kind of what it feels like. I feel like I'm being led into a cat carrier because you're putting this person in front of me and you're like, see? Come see my movie, huh? And then they're either not in it that much or they don't do anything in the movie. And honestly, if they have Chris Pine in the next movie, he needs to do something. He needs to fight. He needs to be something other than sad dad. Because one of the things I've noticed more and more is that these movies don't do right by their male characters either. They just kind of make them clumsy and sad with a veneer of humor to cover that all up. And that's all they are. I'd say the worst offender in this, Brad Pitt did not need to be in Bullet Train at all. He wasn't funny, he was more annoying than anything else, and he made everything worse. I don't care if it was supposed to be a joke that he was supposed to be, oh, the bad luck guy. The best characters were the ones who got cheated or died like assholes because of him. We were supposed to still like him at the end of the movie. I didn't. I found he was the worst part of the movie, and I would like to see one of these characters and not go, here we go. And this also is often paired with the hyper competent girl. She's great at fighting, great at ideas, great at executing those ideas, and that's it. And then she falls in love with the main character, or she has to ask for his help again. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting jaded. Maybe I'm just getting frustrated with, you know, not being able to find movies that aren't hooked to a franchise or adapted in some way. A small fault in an otherwise really good movie. I mean, there were some other things I didn't like about the movie, but mostly inconsequential. The production design seemed a little inconsistent, could seem a little cheap at times. You had Michelle Rodriguez looking like a whole snack, while Sophia Lillis looked like the tiefling from Wish.com. Minor things, largely inconsequential, but that was really mostly what I wanted to rant about today. I think more of these movies should just do right by their so-called millennial protagonists, because that's what Chris Pine is supposed to be. He's supposed to be a millennial dad. I don't think his character was executed very well. And I think Chris Pine himself did really, really well for what he was given. And that loot, practically indestructible. Amazing. Well, my voice is getting tired, and I did say that this wouldn't be a very long video, so please let me know if you would like me to rant about these things more often. They do feel very cathartic, but it still feels a lot like just complaining without trying to fix the problem in any way. Although I don't think I'm able to fix the problem. It's a weird catch-22, but that's besides the point. Please like if you like this video. Please subscribe if you really like this video and would like to see more. And if you really, really like me and would like to support the channel, you can find me on Patreon, where I post full uncensored reaction videos the day before they go up on YouTube. Right now, it's looking like I'm only going to be able to post them on Friday, so I'm going to have to find something else to post on Patreon alongside it. We might be going back to Nirvana and Fire soon, so it'll be just for the patrons. If you would like to find me on social media, you can find me on Tumblr, Twitter, or Instagram, and TikTok. And once again, if you live in the United States, know your rights. Call your congressman. It's not about TikTok. Glad we had this talk. Also, fuck Twitter. And with that being said, stay weird, lovelies, and happy eating!